talked about triangulation. We talked about heterogeneity and attribution, multipliers, all that stuff. Now, there's an important part that you'll also learn is that there's something called taxonomy. You'll hear it over and over again, and the people may use different language for it, but about half the industry will use the word taxonomy to describe what we're about to describe here, which is to organize your data in a way you can make clear decisions, okay? You want to organize your campaigns, your channels, your conversions in some organized way that supports measurement and investment decision making, right? How do you do that? What is a meaningful way to group channels in a way you can make clean decisions is what we call taxonomy. Okay, it's why we need taxonomy. Okay, now how do you think about that? Is here. Okay, think of taxonomy before we go into taxonomy. Think of this as a simple process. You have stimulation in market, which could be media, which could be other econometric conditions in market, could be the economy, could be interest rates, could be a variety of different economic trends, but they act like stimuli on your audience to drive response for your business, right? Response could be sales, could be brand awareness, could be things that you're driving, but fundamentally think of this as a mental model you want to have is stimuli, audience, response. Okay. Okay. Now let's talk about the response side. Let's start from what responses you have. So, there are different ways to break this up, right? I mean, we'll talk about different case studies where we break this up in different ways. We might say, hey, I think Vishnu was talking about it just now, right? Hey, I have new versus returning customers, right? That's a customer segment, right? We want to be able to break up our sales data or responses into new customer revenue, existing customer revenue. In fact, we call something called 3 P&L model. We think of our customer segments as 3 different P&Ls, a new customer P&L, an active customer P&L, and a churned customer P&L, and you're trying to put them together into one P&L for your business. That's kind of how we're operating, whether, in some logical way, when you think about it that way. So those are called customer segments. In many of your brands may be geographically very different. You may be in multiple countries, and media works very differently in different countries. One of the case studies we talk about in class is Rappi. It's an app. It's like it's like Uber Eats of South America. Now, the way the app and the media works in Mexico versus Peru versus Colombia versus Brazil, very, very different. So you have to break them up into different markets and model them in different markets, right? So that you may have to, but you may not be able to do that right away. But eventually, you want to get together, get measurement in that granularity. Different product types: subscription versus first order, right? DTC versus subscription, right? That kind of stuff, right? Hardware, main SKUs, add-on SKUs. These are all different product types. It may make sense for you to break it up or not. Ask the question. Customer funnel. Maybe many cases, especially when you have measuring brand and brand strength and whatnot, you cannot really, if you're talking about auto as an example, or a bigger brand, for example, yes, you all care about transactions, but a lot of media is built on driving awareness, driving consideration before you drive sales. How do you measure that? How can I have different mid-funnel conversions or conversions that are more upper funnel to be able to measure the overall effect that media is having in driving responses across the board for you, right? Metrics. Are you trying to measure just conversions or revenue or margin or LTV or profit? So again, what metrics are the businesses anchored on? So Jennifer, for example, when you're looking at your business, you're asking the question, hey, what is my finance caring about? Right? What metrics are my business sort of like reporting? How do I get marketing to report those metrics? How do I draw a straight line from clicks, conversions, last click revenue, all that stuff to, right, margin dollars, to profit dollars, to LTV dollars and whatnot? In a way, they can look at marketing metrics and say, oh, this is speaking to the business. Right now, the way we present it, it's all kind of gobbledygook, and they're like, I don't know what this means, right? It's kind of like living in this own other universe. This metrics don't belong in the boardroom. These metrics are like business metrics, and marketing metrics are like squishy metrics. How do you get them non-squishy? How do you get them to be hard metrics that can represent marketing's contribution? Is by making sure that you're breaking out the business in this particular way. There's actually in November, there was a gentleman named Kerry Phillips. He is a CMO. He leads marketing for the Aspen Group, which is like a chain of dental clinics. And let me make that as a post read for you guys. He talks about how to let me post that as a post read. He talks about how to take metrics, work with finance, and create one sort of breakdown of the business, and you can figure out where marketing ladders up. It is a fantastic way to articulate the P&L view of marketing's contribution in a very mathematical, accounting focused way. So I'm going to make that as a post-it for you guys. Okay. Other questions you're asking: Am I making investment decisions by customer segment? Am I making media investments by geography? Of course, if you have multiple markets, naturally you are, right? If you're US and Canada, maybe not. If you're US and South America, almost certainly yes, right? You're making very different decisions and executions are very different. So you may have to break out the reporting in that particular way, right? Are you driving media for driving upper funnel outcomes and transaction outcomes very differently, right? Like if you're a bigger brand, very likely you're doing a bunch of like brand investments and awareness investments that are very different than lower funnel demand harvesting investments, right? So you may have to break that up and measure them differently, right? What are you driving? Revenue or margin? If you're in a very profit-focused sort of regime like right now, you may have to report everything in time to like CAC versus LTV ratios, and when are you going to make your money back and acquiring a new customer and all that stuff. Whereas if you live 2 years back, everything was about growth. What is revenue? What is growth rates? What is total amount of new customer revenue? That's all they care about. All the rest doesn't matter, right? Figuring out what to report in a way that speaks to your audience is pretty important. Then there's coming about media taxonomy. Want to group channels by what we call funnel stages. That's what we say in class, which is we may call it channels in certain cases, which is if you take a platform like Facebook, right, or Meta. Now, there are different campaigns inside Meta: retargeting, engaged audiences, broad audiences, reach and frequency. They are meant for very different audiences in different parts of the funnel. Now, if you don't group them meaningfully, you'll squish all of them into, the multipliers will be squished into one. If you say, what is my Facebook multiplier? Well, Facebook multiplier is like 50%. Well, the actual multiplier for retargeting is only 20%, but the multiplier for broad audience is like 150%. A multiplier for engaged audiences are 90%. And the reach and frequency is like 200%. So it may actually end up being a very different multiplier for different parts of the funnel. And for you to be able to break it up in a meaningful way, so you can measure them in a way that's meaningful and also invest in them in a way that's meaningful, is very important, right? So the idea of grouping channels or tactics or campaigns into what we call funnel stages allows you to really measure them and invest in them appropriately. Okay, that's the broad takeaway in this. You'll have all these slides. Let me